the trilogy. Now I'm starting to get worried about this test. Okay, let's knock this out. Maryland Act of Toleration. Okay, so Maryland is our Catholic colony. Lord Baltimore founded Maryland as a safe haven for his Catholic friends and family who are being persecuted in England, which is Protestant, right? It's Anglican or the Church of England. Okay, so Catholics, right? Now, your Catholics own the large amounts of land, but who's farming the land? So early on in your 1600s, it's going to be indentured servants, and most of those are going to be Protestant. So quickly, the Catholic land barons are overrun with Protestant workers. Now, we already talked a little bit about class conflict, and so leaders involved in Maryland are kind of worried that, they might have, a little Protestant indentured servant rebellion, right, that they might want to kind of overshadow this small group of Catholic land barons. Okay, so they're going to issue the Maryland Act of Toleration, and this is for religious toleration. Now, it's actually supposed to protect Catholics, right? It's supposed to protect them and allow them their worship. And what's interesting about the Act of Toleration is that if you don't believe in Jesus, you could be punished by death or forfeiture of all of your property. So it's not really all that tolerant, especially if you're Jewish or atheist or some other religion, but it does protect all Christians. And this is a big deal because it's going to be our first act in writing guaranteeing some form of religious toleration, although by today's standards, it's not super tolerant, but it's a big deal. Let's see. Let's move on to our Puritans. Okay, so your Puritans are going to settle New England, right? The Pilgrims come to Plymouth, and then Massachusetts Bay is really the bigger colony, just a little bit north and east or west of Plymouth, right? So both will be in modern day Massachusetts. Now, the interesting thing about the Puritans is they brought their whole families. They came over with the intention of settling and starting a new life. And so they actually have, they've got to really survive, right? They're not there to find gold. They're there to make a new living based on their faith. And so your Puritans are also escaping religious persecution. Now, they work a little better with the Native Americans, honestly, because they kind of need them for food in the get-go, and that'll change a little bit, but we'll get to that in a second. Okay, so your Puritans, so something to know, of course, the big tenet of their religion is predestination, right? They believe everyone, or God has already decided who's going to heaven and who's going to hell, and there's nothing you can do to change that, right? And so that's their big idea. Now, your Puritans, while they're escaping religious persecution, they're not tolerant of other religions. They believe that their religion is the best, it's the chosen religion the right way. And so they want to create these model communities based on Puritanism. And they don't want other religions. They don't want Anglicans, they don't want Catholics, Presbyterians. They are what we call a homogenous group, right? So homogeneity, where they're all the same religion, they kind of act the same, dress the same, very common, right? Well, conformity is what we're going to call that in the 1950s, but we're not there yet. And they're kind of exclusive, right? They only want like-minded people together in their community. Okay, so that takes us to John Winthrop in A City on a Hill. So John Winthrop's going to be the governor of Massachusetts Bay, and he says Massachusetts Bay Colony is going to be as a city on a hill. And so what he means is that model community that everyone's going to look up to. And so he wanted that model community based on Christian faith, and he thought, everyone was going to copy that, right? Okay, and so New England is going to be predominantly Puritans, and so very religious, coming over to practice their religion there. Now, there's a few dissenters, right, that don't buy into, or a few rebels that don't buy into everything that the Puritans believe in. Anne Hutchinson is one of them. Now, she was Puritan. She believed in predestination. She's from Massachusetts Bay, but she started questioning good works because Puritans said, like, even though you're predestined and no matter what you do, it's not going to save you. They said, you got to do good works. You've got to always be busy. You've got to do good deeds, don't sin, right? Don't do anything bad. And they're kind of watching each other and making sure everyone's on the right path. And she questioned that. She said, look, what's the point? And I don't think she was trying to say, look, let's have lawlessness. She was saying, this doesn't make sense. Let's bring up a dialogue and help me understand this. And so they put her on trial, of course, and they find her guilty of challenging Puritan religion, challenging Puritan orthodoxy, and then also overstepping her gender bounds, because they said she was preaching, and for Puritans, women can't preach. Okay, so she gets exiled and goes to Rhode Island and then New York. Another dissenter that's not on your test, but could definitely be on the AP exam, would be Roger Williams, right? So the Salem minister who said we should pay the Native Americans for their land. He believed in real religious toleration, not just Puritans. And he also believed in separating church and state. He said that your tax dollars should not go to support a state religion, and that the state government shouldn't meddle in religious affairs. Okay, so he gets exiled for dangerous and new opinions, and he will form Rhode Island, which is one of the most tolerant and liberal colonies at the time. Okay, and they did pay the Native Americans for their land. Okay, what do we have? Metacom's War. Okay, so back to those good God-fearing Puritans, right? They feared God and followed the Bible and killed a lot of Native Americans. Okay, so there's a couple different, well, you want to know about the relationship between the settlers and the Native Americans in general. So we've got Powhatans in Virginia, and that was always pretty tricky from the get-go. They conflicted from the get-go and fought off and on. Okay, now, initially, your New England Puritan settlers were friendly. We had the first Thanksgiving. And then as you get more and more settlers who need more and more land, they're going to fight over the land. And so one of the first big wars is the Pequot War. The Pequots are trading really well with the Dutch. They're already powerful. They have some other Native American enemies, and your Puritans and a couple other Native American tribes will band together. And this is called the Murder at Mystic. So on the Mystic River, where they basically burn the Pequot Indians in their huts. They're sleeping, women, children, older people get burned in their sleep. And we don't hear of the Pequot tribe anymore. They've pretty much disappeared at this point, or the few survivors have melded into other tribes. Okay, the big war to know about would be Metacom's War or King Philip's War. So the English called him King Philip. His real name is Metacom. Now, Metacom realizes that one of the reasons the Native Americans are losing is because they're not united. And so he's actually going to have one of the first efforts to unite several tribes that were not so friendly with each other and to fight these Puritan New Englanders. And so he bands together, they fight, and kind of how all of these, or a lot of the Native American battles go. They win some battles, but they don't win the war. And Metacom will get captured, and the Puritan New England settlers, they actually behead him and have his body drawn and quartered, and then they sell his wife and son into slavery. So that's, good Christian values going on right there. Okay, but the idea is to know that there was much conflict between the Native Americans, and especially over land. Okay, last idea to know will be colonists versus leaders. So a lot of times we're going to see the colonists act on their own. They defy what the leaders tell them to do. So Bacon's Rebellion's a big one, right? We're going to take the Indians' land, we're going to attack them, we're going to attack you guys. And then also with sometimes with the different Native American battles, it's going to be settlers attacking the Native Americans without the approval of the government. Not always will the leaders say, well, the leaders aren't always leading these battles, right? And calling for war against the Native Americans. Okay. Oh, something else to add on, I forgot off your list, will be the French colonies. So you want to know the French colonies mainly were fur trapping and fur trading. So in Canada, they had some bigger cities like Quebec, but in the US area, they're in the Mississippi River Valley and Ohio River Valley. And it's a lot of young men that are coming over for fur trading. And so they're going to trade with the Indians, they're going to live with the Indians and trap the animals, learn how to do that from the Native Americans, and they were more likely to intermarry with Native Americans and just trade with them. They didn't want to assimilate them as much or change them or take the land away. There's a couple Jesuit missionaries, but not as many as the Spanish or the English. So the French actually have a really good relationship with the Native Americans, and it's mostly actually French men coming over, and they would tend to marry the Native American women. So keep that in mind. Okay, I have a couple documents that you should know. So I handed these out to you in class, or these are easily found on the internet if you lost it. The Freethorn letter. This is an indentured servant's letter. Okay, so this is something you might want to be familiar with for the test. The Maryland Toleration Act. Okay, we read part of that in class about how it's not so tolerant. And then a city on a hill speech. And so that's one where you want to know is talking about, kind of that model city. Okay, well, I think we've covered everything in our little trilogy for what's going to be on the Unit 1 exam. So good luck. May the force be with you.